everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp. Thanks for being here. I don't usually live stream today, but I had a few reasons for doing it. One is we got a lot of breaking news with Israel bombing Lebanon, Beirut this time, with Israel assassinating one of Hamas's top leaders in Tehran, and with the ongoing chaos that the U.S. is trying to create, facilitating in Venezuela as they continue to fight that. So much going on there. Plus, I have Sabby Sabs here, so very excited to cover all that. And I'll be missing several days next week, so why not give you a live stream on my day off? But so let's jump into it. Please click thumbs up, click share, click subscribe. If there's any other things to click, I don't know what the clickables are these days. Please do it. And yeah, let's get going. And I'll bring Sabby in right up top. She's the host of the podcast, the Sabby Sabs podcast, as well as co-host of Revolutionary Blackout Network. Hello.
Hi, Lee. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for doing the show. We got a lot of news ongoing right now. Perhaps one of the biggest things is that Israel is elevating, is broadening this war, as many said they were going to do, and now they bombed Beirut, and they likely have killed. It seems unclear, but they likely have killed a higher up in Hezbollah. But yeah, your thoughts on what Israel's doing right now, and of course, it comes within a week of Netanyahu appearing at Congress as if he's our president.
Yes, it's interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed Professor Morandi, who is in Tehran, and he predicted that Israel was going to expand this war, that things would get worse before they possibly get better. And here we are. So I wasn't surprised about the attack in Beirut. I wasn't surprised about the assassination of the Hamas leader in Tehran. I hope the American people really understand what this means. And an all-out, full-scale war in the Middle East is going to be painful for all of us. And I hope people think about this when we're going into the presidential election, because this is one of the things that is just boggling my mind. A number of people are now willing to jump on board with Kamala Harris. And I'm talking about those that were pro-Palestinian supporters, even though Kamala Harris will still continue to give Israel weapons. She's made this very clear that Israel has a right to defend itself. There's no difference in the rhetoric between supporting Israel when you compare her rhetoric to Joe Biden. The only difference is she was a little bit firmer, I guess, with Netanyahu. But at the end of the day, here is where we are.
Yeah, and this, I've just put it on the screen. This is the footage from Beirut. And, you know, I covered last week that there were reports that Netanyahu got the approval from Biden, the Biden administration, you know, whoever cuts up Biden's food for him, gave the approval that Netanyahu could broaden this war with Lebanon, as they clearly have done with this bombing in Beirut. And, you know, the kind of false flag it's that Israel used to, I don't know, to allow for, to justify this latest bombing of Beirut was the blast that hit in the Golan Heights, which is an area of Syria that Israel has annexed, which is a polite term for stolen, and it killed 12 people, including some children. But what our mainstream media does not like to really talk about, as they say, oh my God, this blast killed 12 people, is that these were basically Arab people. These were basically Syrians in an area that Israel has stolen. So the idea that Netanyahu was so upset over a blast that killed 12 Arab Syrian people is, and for that reason had to attack Beirut and had to broaden the war in Lebanon. Do you think Netanyahu was real torn up about that?
No, this would have happened regardless if that attack didn't happen in the Golan Heights. Like that has been the plan all along. Netanyahu has made it very clear on the world stage of his plan to expand Israel for a greater Israel. And that includes parts of Lebanon, parts of Syria as well. So this would have happened regardless. It's interesting too, though, because even News Nation, which is owned by Nexstar, so News Nation and The Hill are both owned by the same company. They try, I guess, to pretend to be independent, but they are still corporate. Nexstar is corporate. Even Chris Cuomo on News Nation, he's getting this wrong. I had to correct him on X about it and tell him they were not Israeli people. So they're repeating some of the same talking points from mainstream media, and I don't see anybody issuing any retractions. Again, this is all a part of the game. All I can say to people is it is very important that we hold firm to our demands. Now, we were demanding a ceasefire. We were demanding, freedom from the occupation for the Palestinian people, for Palestinian liberation. And it's very clear to me that people have started to waver on those demands now that Joe Biden is not running for reelection and it's Kamala Harris. And this is why the left does not win in this country. All the Democratic Party has to do is wave a shiny object in front of you and you're willing to background. I saw this during the George Floyd protests. The same thing happened. Everyone was out in the streets. I mean, everyone was out in the streets protesting against police brutality, saying defund the police. And then the moment that Donald Trump lost and Joe Biden won, a lot of the protesters went home as if the problem had been solved. The demands were not met. So I think those of us that are on the left, we have to get serious about sticking to those demands. I know my producer, Eric, he has 11 demands. He talks about this all the time. I recommend people to check that out, 11 demands, because we list a
I've
whole...
only got room for 10. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he purposely did 11 because there's too many 10 demands.
There's too many 10 demands. All right.
Yeah, but this is the problem, people. This is why the politicians don't do anything for the American people. Not only that, but also, of course, there's corporate money. There's a lot of corporate money attached to this. So a lot of our politicians are bought off. But to go along with that, we don't hold firm on our demands. We make demands. And then the moment, again, there's a shiny candidate in front of us, we just fall back.
Yeah, you might be paying more attention or be more in touch with some of these people who were very critical of Biden, and like you said, now that we've been dumped, we've had Kamala Harris dumped in our laps, as if anyone ever voted for her to be the presidential nominee. That they've now switched and said, okay, now it's good. Talk a little more about that. And what is it like? What is the difference they see? I mean, yes, I suppose her brain is functioning better than Biden's is, but in terms of actual policies, what is the difference? What is it I'm missing? And I've heard, I haven't seen it, but I've heard I've been torn apart by a couple of these pro Kamala people who can't believe that I'm critical of the people that I've always been critical of, but.
So they don't really connect her to the genocide. That's a big part of the problem. Even though she's part of the Biden administration, they put the blame solely on Joe Biden because he is.
But what's the evidence that she'd do anything else?
Right. Exactly. So that's a big part of it. Even after she gave that speech recently, when she talked about her talk with Netanyahu, and she said that Israel has a right to defend itself and she's still pro-Israel, the same things that Joe Biden was saying. A lot of these people didn't even flinch. They're still just going along with it. These are people that have Palestinian flags, in their bio. And some of them have reached out to me privately and said that they're willing to do anything to stop Donald Trump. But then that doesn't connect because you weren't applying that same logic to Joe Biden. You were saying, no, we're not going to vote for you. And once it became Kamala Harris, all of a sudden genocide is not a red line. People are still being killed in Gaza. People are still being killed in the West Bank. Kamala Harris has a website with no platform. And all these people just jumped in line as if this is going to be the great solution. I don't understand this at all. And I think it's very problematic. And it says something to me about the voter base. A lot of the people that were out in the streets, and I was out in the streets protesting with them, these are some of the same people that said, well, it's Kamala now and she won't be as harsh as Joe Biden. But she made it very clear to you, she is still going to give Israel weapons. That is not going to stop. So The Democratic Party, I will say, played this very well. They put someone out in front of American voters that young voters are more likely to gravitate towards. And that is someone like a Kamala Harris, also a person of color, also a female. So they actually played this card really well. But what is concerning to me, in particular, the younger voters who were saying that genocide is a red line, is concerning to me that now they're willing to waver on that because Kamala is the nominee and not Joe Biden. That's a problem.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I just want to read a few before we move on. I want to read a little bit of what Jeremy Scahill wrote about Hamas's political leader was assassinated in Tehran in an apparent Israeli strike. And of course, this isn't just the assassination of a Hamas leader, but it also is an attack on Iran, which is, surprise, surprise, a sovereign nation. And this is an attack within their borders. The U.S. has denied it was aware of the strike beforehand, but of course, that's what they would say, and that's laughable. He had the Hamas leader, Haniyeh, had traveled from Qatar for the inauguration of Iran's new president. Of course, Iran putting in it or electing a new president, likely because the last one was assassinated by Israel. I mean, yeah, his helicopter crashed, but surprise, surprise, his helicopter crashes within weeks of Iran striking Israel with the 300 projectiles that 86% were shot down by the Iron Dome, but not the ones Iran wanted to get through. And Scahill and others have made the point that he was a pivotal figure in the Gaza ceasefire negotiations, which I think are largely theatrics by Netanyahu. But many are asking, how can mediation succeed when one party assassinates the negotiator on the other side? Your thoughts?
So this is a huge problem that we are running into right now. I want people to understand this. Israel basically just started war with Iran. This is not just about the Hamas leader. Think about it this way. Number one, yes, they are allowed to go after Hamas. They are not allowed to go after Hamas in Iran. They knew that that was a territory that they are not supposed to touch. They already had this agreement with the Biden administration, when there was the back and forth between Iran and Israel. This would be the equivalent to, imagine if Hamas chose to strike Netanyahu when he was here in the United States to speak to Congress. You see the problem? They know that's a territory they're not supposed to touch. From what I have seen already, Iran has already responded and said that they will respond to Israel for this. And I think we all know what that means. They are trying to wage a full-scale war here with Iran, with Hezbollah. Oh, and by the way, the State Department is more than happy and willing to send U.S. troops over there to fight this war. They're already talking about this. They said if they have to send American troops to the Middle East to protect Israel, they will do this. So one of the things that I've been telling people, if you are in the military, it is your time to get out. Get out while you can. You do not need to go over there fighting these wars. They want to send your brother, your son, your cousin, your friend, your significant other over there to fight these wars that they have been escalating. So this is a big problem.
Yeah, and it seems like part of the reason they're escalating, Israel's escalating, even though they can't beat Iran, at least not alone. They can't beat Hezbollah alone. But it seems to be Netanyahu just fighting for his political survival, because he could very well end up in jail, put there by Israelis if he's not in office. Now, that doesn't mean most Israelis don't support the genocide in Gaza. In fact, it's like 80-90% do support ethnic cleansing in Gaza. So, unfortunately, that's not the reason. The reason is because they think Netanyahu is not doing genocide right.
That's right. And this is why Aaron Bushnell did what he did, because they were really willing to. He knew, they had already spoken to him. They knew that they were trying to send American Air Force soldiers over there to kill Palestinian kids. And he didn't want to be a part of this. And so America really has to wake up here. And I've already seen a statement from the UK that says that they are not going to supply weapons anymore to Israel, although those aren't the largest amount of weapons that Israel is receiving. They're not going to supply the weapons anymore. They've also made a statement that if Netanyahu steps foot in the UK, he will be arrested. You know, this is the position that the US government should be taking, but they won't because the politicians are bought off by the Israeli lobby. So corporate money and electoral politics is a big part of this problem.
Yeah, definitely. The American Congress is, I mean, if not owned by Israel, they're receiving enough money from Israel that they're never going to stand against it. Of course, giving all those standing ovations for Netanyahu as he spoke. I mean, there was kind of no better imagery for where the U.S. empire is now than endless standing ovations for a bloodthirsty genocidal maniac. It kind of really summed up things nicely.
That's right. And it was really embarrassing. I mean, I remember watching the video and I just thought to myself, all those people that are standing in Congress, like clapping their hands for Netanyahu, all of those people are traitors. And the same thing to the politicians that claim they're America first. That's not America first. You know, it seems like when you talk about Russia and Ukraine, some of these politicians will say, no money to Ukraine. We need to take care of America first. But the moment that you switch the country from Ukraine to Israel, all of a sudden the America first just goes away and they'll do whatever they can to protect and support Israel. That's a big problem that we have. I'm looking at all the money that's going out the door, billions to Ukraine, $3.8 billion a year to Israel. If you look at how the quality of life is in Israel, we're talking about the fact that they have universal health care. We don't have universal health care in this country. College tuition, it's free in Israel. We don't have free college in this country. So why is our government giving all this money to another country or another entity to have some of these benefits that they're not even willing to give us?
Yeah, I know. We're basically, U.S. taxpayers are kind of paying for Israel to have health care.
Yeah.
So I want to go now to Venezuela, where the U.S. is trying to create a coup there yet again. I mean, the U.S. seems to be doing this every election cycle. There seems to be a fair amount of chaos in the streets. I want to play this short clip from Alan McLeod with Mint Press reporting from Caracas.
Riots is plain to see here. I'm in Caracas here. It's July 30th, and last night, tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of opposition supporters went to the streets and vented their anger, destroying cars like this. They set fire to hospitals, to clinics, to government buildings. They blocked roads all across the country, claiming that they actually won the elections. They were citing a poll by an American company linked to the CIA that claimed that they won 73% of the vote. Now, the Chavistas have not taken this lightly. They are organizing in their hundreds of thousands, and later on today, they're going to march on the Miraflores presidential palace to defend it. Stay tuned to Mint Press for...
So, and yeah, basically the only evidence that the opposition has come forward with saying they won this election is one poll by Edison Research, which is way off from all other polling, way off from the actual results. And Edison Research is funded by essentially the U.S. government along with corporate U.S. media entities.
It's really interesting. I've been following some of the people that were on the ground for those elections in Venezuela. I know Rania Khalek was just there, as well as Alan. And one of the things that's been very clear to me, and I learned this earlier on by Anya Parampil, because she just published a book called Corporate Coup. It was about the coup in Venezuela earlier on. But people have to understand some of these countries in South America have more transparent elections than we do here in the United States, meaning that everyone that shows up has to have a photo ID, meaning that even in Colombia, they were counting the ballots in front of the voters, right? So it's much more transparent than what we have here. There is no mail-in ballots. Like there's none of that. So that's number one. Number two, people have to understand what the opposition to Maduro really represents. The opposition to Maduro represents the state of Israel. And this is something I think some people may not be aware of, but if you follow, I think her name's Marina. If you follow Maria, there's a video going around on Twitter where she stated that their plan was to move the Venezuelan embassy to Jerusalem. So she's 100% pro-Israel. This is who Israel wanted. They wanted the opposition, and that's who the U.S. government wanted. So for the people who are coming out and they're saying no to Maduro because he's a dictator and all of this jazz, and no to socialism and yada, yada, which is not truly socialism anyway, what they have to understand is that the opposition stands with Israel. So if you stand with the opposition, you stand with Israel. This is what Netanyahu wants. Netanyahu wants the opposition to win there in Venezuela. So here you have the U.S. government, because they didn't get things, didn't get their way, basically. Now they're going to start another coup in Venezuela. Everybody needs to remember this. When they complain about Venezuelan migrants coming across the border, everybody needs to remember what is happening in Venezuela and add the sanctions along with that. You have the sanctions, you have the coups. What do you expect the people in that country to do?
Yeah, exactly. If the U.S. really wants to stop immigration, you stop destroying the countries where people are fleeing, because that's kind of reason number one that people start heading north. But of course, the U.S. only wants to stop certain kinds of immigration. They are not going after the millions of immigrants that are required for our farming, for so much industry. But on top of that, there's not actually that much difference between these two candidates. Yet again, Reuters is now reporting Biden has deported more people than even Trump did. Doesn't mean Trump didn't try. He just maybe wasn't as good at it. But I also want to play a clip in terms of the U.S., yet again, trying to call into doubt Venezuelan elections, despite the fact Venezuela also has a lot of election, integrity people that come and monitor, election monitors, that the U.S. does not and would never allow. But here's the State Department spokesperson basically saying, oh, yeah, we have so many questions about what happened.
But before that, let me go back to the Venezuela election. I'm having trouble understanding the U.S. assessment at this point. The secretary said that it does not reflect the will of or the voice of the people. What does it reflect? Is it stolen? Can you be precise about your assessment at this point?
Alex, that is exactly what we are working closely in close coordination with partners and allies to unearth, and that is why you saw the secretary call for a publication of the detailed tabulation of votes, and that's what us and other regional partners are looking for as well.
The U.S. never puts out a detailed tabulation of votes because the U.S. has hidden code in the computers that no one can ever see. And on top of that, yet again, we're just handed a Democratic presidential nominee with 0 votes.
And no one in corporate media is calling that out, by the way. Everyone just jumped on board, but it's really important that people call that out. None of you voted for Kamala Harris in a 2024 Democrat primary. None of you voted for her. But our government has the audacity to tell other countries who their leaders can be. They meddle in other countries' elections all the time. It's totally fine for the U.S. government to do it. And then they're the ones that will turn around and they'll accuse Russia and trying to do the same thing to us. It's laughable at this point. And I think that's one thing that the U.S. government and Israel have in common, which is that they don't feel that they should be held accountable. The other countries should.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just, of course, any country like Saudi Arabia that has 0 democracy, it doesn't matter to the U.S. because they're an ally and the U.S. needs them. We need them for the petrodollar. Even though the petrodollar deal is now over, Saudi Arabia still buys or sells a lot of oil in dollars. So it's still very important to have Saudi Arabia. So, you don't notice them questioning Saudi Arabia's quote unquote democracy, which doesn't exist.
That's right. And it's interesting, too, with Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is also now a part of BRICS. So Saudi Arabia is not like, they don't look at the U.S. government as like their bestie. They're willing to have other friends.
Yeah. And which is the U.S. is finding very threatening. In fact, the week that the petrodollar deal ended, within like a week, mainstream media, for the first time ever, I played some of the CBS clips, is saying maybe Saudi Arabia did 9/11. So all of a sudden the mainstream media was like, now that you've offended us. I wanted, we mentioned Kamala a couple of times. I wanted to play this 7-second clip that I just found remarkably repulsive. Her answer to what to do about police violence by police. And of course, she is a proud defender of all police. She defended cop killers while she was in California. And anyway, here is her answer to how to stop so many killings by police. It's around 1,200 a year, but the Lancet Medical Journal says it's actually double that, because half of all police killings don't go down, don't get written down as police killings. They just get written down as heart attack or something. So 2,400 people, Americans, killed by cops a year. Here's Kamala Harris's answer.
That, nothing, talk about violence, nothing stops a bullet like a job.
There you go. Nothing stops a bullet like a job.
Yeah. It's just, this is who Kamala Harris is. Remember, she was once referred to as California's top cop, right? This is why it frustrates me when I hear conservatives say Kamala Harris is going to defund the police. No, she's not. She's a cop. She supports the police. She always has supported the police. So that's another thing that people need to pay close attention to with her. What's going to happen with policing with Kamala Harris as president of the United States, because she's not going to look, just put it this way. I can see her giving just as much money to the police as Joe Biden did.
Oh, yeah, I'd say absolutely will, or maybe more. I do find it funny that, her answer was nothing stops a bullet like a job. And, she's in her mind, the reason she said that was that people who are poor and out of work, they tend to be involved in more dirty things, more violence, etc. But she also very accidentally spoke the truth about U.S. policing, which is U.S. policing. The system is designed to go after the lower classes. It's designed to both imprison lower class people, but also investigate lower class people. There's not thousands of cops running through the halls of Wall Street trying to find out who's using drugs or, whether they're abusing their spouse or something like that. So in a way, she's correct, but not for the reason she thinks. She's correct because cops don't kill rich people. They tend to show up at the doors or sometimes the street corners of poor people. And then inevitably, when you have maniacs with guns getting involved in people's lives, they end up killing some of them. And that's what we see in America. And so she's correct because of the horrific indictment of the U.S. policing system. But she doesn't know that that's what she just said.
Right. And I haven't heard Kamala Harris speak out against any of the cop cities that are being built in the United States. In fact, I haven't heard a lot of people, politicians, speak out against that. Like, they support that type of thing. They know what's coming. They know the economy is struggling. They know the American people are becoming more and more fed up with the system as a whole. So I think they want to train as many cops as possible, militarize the police as much as they can for what is coming, which is going to be the economic war. We haven't reached that yet. I think some people are very frustrated. I've heard a lot of people, complain and angered about the economy, but we're not to the point yet where people are willing to capture 5% out in the streets over the economy, not just over, the wars, not over policing, but I mean the economy, an actual class war. We have not gotten to that point just yet. But they know it's coming, and they know it's coming because they look at the data about home ownership. They see that younger people can't buy homes. They see that the rent continues to increase and more people are being evicted. Homelessness went up 25% under the Biden administration. They see these numbers. They see the tent communities increasing. It's not just California. It's all across the country. So they know it's only a matter of time before somebody will be able to organize and start some type of a class movement in this country. And then they're done for, because then at that point, it's not about the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. It's about the top 0.01%, which is what Bernie did try to tell everybody back then. But Bernie kind of sold out himself. But it's about the people at the top. It's about the billionaire class. It's about the oligarchs that keep us all divided, and they keep all this wealth to themselves. Meanwhile, you have people in this country that are working 2 and 3 jobs just to pay for rent.
Yeah, wonderful points, and I love your optimism that the people are going to unite in this class war. But you mentioned about keeping us divided. Do you think they're going to successfully continue to keep us divided, continue to make it so that half of everybody in this country says, "Oh, anybody who voted MAGA is the problem," and the other half says anybody who voted other than MAGA is the problem? That's just one of the ways we're divided. There's millions of others, or dozens of others, race and gender and everything else. But are they going to keep succeeding at dividing us?
I think we haven't reached rock bottom just yet. The closest that I've seen us come with the economy, with some type of a class war, was Occupy Wall Street, right? But unfortunately, that was shut down. And even that, the numbers weren't large enough. Like even Occupy Wall Street didn't match.
I was there the first night. I need a first night pen that I can wear on my Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah, even Occupy didn't have the numbers that the George Floyd protest had, or the pro-Palestinian, protest had. So we need a larger number, but we're going to have to, the economy is going to have to hit rock bottom. And I know the grocery store prices are high right now, but we're not at rock bottom yet. But I think that's the closest that we came, was during that Obama era, where there was the Occupy Wall Street and the housing collapse and all that stuff. But it's going to happen. And if you listen to, I don't know if you watch Professor Richard Wolff.
Love him. I think maybe him and Hedges are the people I've interviewed the most over my career.
Yeah. So Professor Wolff has been predicting this for quite some time, and he's telling people it is coming because there are certain trends that happen with the economy. We have gotten to the point, at least with the housing crisis, where this is not sustainable anymore. It is not sustainable to have a average one bedroom apartment starting at $2,500. Like, this is just ridiculous. We have universities that are producing degrees that are no longer producing jobs. Right? But people are still graduating with those degrees. You have people graduating from college with a bachelor's or a master's, but the salary doesn't add up to what they should make for that degree or for that profession that they went into, and they still can't keep up with the cost of housing. So even people who are graduating with master's degrees still have to have 3 or 4 roommates, and a lot of these cities that offer the jobs. So again, this is not sustainable. BlackRock has bought in so many of the single family homes. This started after the crash of the housing market in 2008. That has continued. And it's not just them. You have BlackRock, you have Vanguard. This is why when people say there are no homes, there are homes. You just can't afford to buy them because
17 million.
Exactly. Because BlackRock, companies like them, have bought those single family homes, they renovate them, and then they increase the price. They don't want people to buy homes. What they want is 15-minute cities. And this is what I've been trying to stress to people. They want you to live in a shoebox, especially the younger people. They want them to live in a shoebox. They don't want you to have a car. They want you to have everything you need in this tiny little space, and you will be happy. This is the big economic picture that I want people to pay attention to. This is why it is very difficult for a lot of people, younger people now, to buy a home, but that's the way they want it. But eventually, I think this is going to get to the point where people are going to have enough, because you can't continue the way that we're going. You can't continue. The other thing I think that's going to happen is I think more young people are going to leave the country. Some of that is already happening, but I think that's going to increase. They're going to move to countries where they can live cheaply. You have younger people moving to countries like Brazil, right? You have them moving to China, all these different places where they can have healthcare and they can have a quality of life that they can't have here in the United States. Sorry, I went on a rant there, Lee.
I love your rants. I'll make this the last question. We were talking about dividing people, and I think in certain ways, obviously, there need to be red lines where you can be divided from some of the, like, there are red lines. If someone supports the genocide in Gaza, I definitely have a red line there, and I've got others. But I do find it fascinating. I just wanted to get your thought on this. The success that has happened in dividing up those of us in independent media. I think when I started Redacted at Night, probably up through 5 years ago or something, I viewed all these people in independent media as kind of allies, and I'd interview them, and it didn't mean I agreed with every point they had, but I agreed with many of them. And now I think there's 7 that will still speak to me. Luckily, you're one of them, but.
Oh, Lee, I am so I totally hear where you're coming from. I think it was different for those of us at RBM because we started after the Bernie wave. We watched all of you guys during that time, like Bernie 2016, 2020. We watched all of your independent media shows, but we were never a part of that in this space at that time. We started in 2021. So we started at a kind of awkward time because there wasn't a presidential election. We really had to build from the ground up because we just didn't. There was no election. If you started during the Bernie campaigns, I think may have been a little bit easier for you. So we had a difficult time just starting and getting our foot off the ground and stuff like that. Along the way, we definitely made some enemies, and I think that we're obviously post-duopoly. We've decided to support third-party independent candidates, and I've been talking about that for probably 3 years now. And apparently that angered some people who still wanted to support the Democratic Party that were a part of that Bernie movement with us. And when I said that I did not support candidates that take corporate money, when I said I would not support candidates that support Israel and are against BDS, when I said I would not support candidates that do not support universal health care, I meant that. And that doesn't mean that because the Democratic Party puts a shiny new candidate in front of me, or they're somewhat close to that I was going to change my mind and join that. And that's I think that's part of where that split in independent media comes from. People who are still willing to support the Democratic Party because they want to stop Trump. I don't even care about Trump. Most people, I can tell you, if you go to the hood and you talk to people in the hood, most people in the hood do not care about this. They are not worried about, oh my God, Donald Trump. They're not thinking about that at all. They're thinking about how they're going to put food on the table. So people have to understand that. I also feel there's a bit of a class divide. I feel like a lot of people in this space in particular, they're at a class that I'm not a part of. And I'm in a class that are above some other people, but I'm definitely not in their class. So I'm not a millionaire here. So it's that type of thing too. And then there's certain things that come along with that. I think sometimes when people, they get into a certain class bracket where they kind of look down on the people that they were once cheerleading and rooting for. How can you talk about supporting the working class and you're looking down on working class people that are in the independent media space? So that is a problem. And I do feel like since Bernie decided to suspend his campaign in 2020, I feel like there has been somewhat of a battle among independent media hosts. It's almost like people are trying to fight for each other's audiences. And that's a shame. Think about what we could accomplish if all of us worked together. Could you imagine if there was one big network, like think Breaking Points, but on a larger scale, even larger scale, one big network where all the left, like independent media, was just up under one umbrella. Imagine.
Yeah. No, I think about that a lot. I think it'd be incredible, but yeah, there's a lot of infighting. Some of it is by design, some of it's not by design. But it's kind of sad to see. But luckily, there's still amazing people doing amazing stuff, and you're one of them. So thank you for that, and remind everybody how they can follow your work.
Yeah, you guys can find me on YouTube. My channel is Sabby Sabs, and I'm also a co-host on Revolutionary Blackout Network. We do really great work over there, and you can find me on Twitter at Sabby Sabs 2.
Thank you again, Sabby.
Thanks, Lee. Bye.
All right. Always a pleasure to talk to Sabby. So I hope you enjoyed this this bonus episode. I'm not normally on, don't normally do the Dangerous Ideas on Wednesdays, but I will be doing Government Secrets in about less than an hour. That's at youtube.com/Moment of Clarity. You can watch that there. Government Secrets podcast live. But also, if you appreciate this bonus episode, then why not go become a member at leecamp.net? You can join up for free, but you won't get all the perks. But if you want to support the show, then when you get to leecamp.net, scroll down to become a subscriber. And I will see you Thursday and Friday as well as Monday. But then I'm going to have several days off due to travel. So enjoy it while you can. Suck it in while you can, folks. Not sure why that's said angrily. But all right. Hopefully I'll see some of you in less than an hour at Government Secrets. And for the rest of you, I will see you tomorrow and keep fighting.